So unfortunately, we had to cut it a little short. A lot of times we'll chant for 2, 3, 4 hours. Sometimes longer, 8 hours, 12 hours. What did you lose?
I lost a screw.
Only that a few years ago.
Okay, let's look for it up.
It'll probably still.
It's mine here.
Here it is.
Hey, found it. Thank you.
That's why he's here at UTSA. All right.
Sometimes people ask, well, why meditate anyway? What's the value? And other people, they intrinsically understand that there's a need sometimes, or perhaps all the time, to go beyond the mental sphere that we're always existing on. Because sometimes the mind gets very tired. In fact, it's explained that when one is very enlivened, especially spiritually, then one needs less sleep. Because when we're sleeping, it's not that just the body needs to rest for a certain amount of hours, but the mind needs to rest. Sometimes quite a bit more than the body needs to rest because of all the mental activities and the mental agitation that we experience during the day. A lot of times a person is tired just because they're mentally fatigued. It doesn't just have to do with fatigue of the body. So the mind often gets fatigued, especially in this society that we're living in, because it is always struggling. Sanskrit it's called sankalpa vikalpa, or accepting and rejecting. I like this, I don't like this, I want that, I don't want that. How can I avoid this? How can I get that? So many problems that plague us in a complex society that is basically oriented materially. Because if we're always on that platform, sometimes we'll be happy, sometimes we won't be happy. It's called the platform of duality. You've heard that word, duality. Happiness, stress, heat, cold, pleasure, pain, victory, defeat, honor, dishonor, loss, gain, sickness, health. There's always one thing that we want and another thing we're trying to avoid. But we can't always get what we want, especially in this world, the way it is. So we're always in a situation where sometimes things are going well, sometimes they're not going well, materially speaking. And this tires us out quite a bit. And we often seek relief. How can I become satisfied and peaceful in an ever-changing situation that's filled with dualities? We're always looking for that nice situation. And sometimes we get it, and it doesn't last. And of course, if you look around the rest of the world, there are many societies where people are just miserable practically constantly because of all the hardships that they're undergoing. So when we're absorbed materially in this world, the mind gets very, very tired, fatigued. We get frustrated. So we seek some relief. And usually the methods of relief are found in other activities of a material nature that also have the same makeup. Just like, I need some relief, so I'll get intoxicated. It's very nice. Who can deny that? But how long is it very nice for? And when you go back to your normal life, it's the same. It's not that we've grown anymore from our experience of intoxication. We've been able to dull the senses and experience some sense of relief. That relief is just, it's very temporary, it's limited, and it also has its consequences. And of course, there are so many means of intoxication, not just intoxicants, as we call them, but other types of activities that give us some relief from the stresses of modern society. Like what? Video games, for example. One might argue that, well, there's some value in video games. There is some value. You get temporary relief from the stresses of your life. Or you go to a movie, you get relief from the stresses of your life. You're into someone else's life for a while. So there are various ways that we can get some break from the complexities and the frustrations that we have to experience every day. But these methods, they're temporary. They're limited. They don't help us grow internally. So for a person who wants something more than that, then meditation is relevant. Because through proper means of meditation, one can not only get relief from the stresses of modern life, but one can actually grow internally to the point where these stresses of modern life are no longer stresses. One can relate to them and experience them in a different way, from a higher standpoint, from the spiritual platform. So when one begins to have an experience a little bit beyond the material experience, one can look at that material experience in a different perspective. For example, it's explained in the Vedas that the soul, or the self, consciousness, is beyond the body, beyond the senses, and so on. And the nature of consciousness is called Satchit Ananda. There's a Swami, his name is Satchit Ananda Swami. You've heard that name before, Satchit Ananda. Sat means eternal, Chit means full of knowledge, and Ananda means bliss, full of bliss. So it's explained that's the nature of the self, of consciousness. And we're thinking about that now. Perhaps you're hearing that and pondering it, trying to understand it. And that's because we've gotten so far away from our actual natures that when we hear about who we really are, it sounds a little bit foreign to us. Eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. Because we're here in this material world, we were born at a certain time, we have a certain material identity, and in this society we're taught to think of the self in terms of our material identity. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm white, yellow, I come from this nation, etc. I'm rich, I'm poor. These have to do with our material designations. So the soul, or consciousness, is beyond those material designations. And it transcends the limitations of those designations to the point where, for example, Ananda, bliss, that refers to happiness that is unending and that always increases. So that's not the nature of material happiness. It's temporary, it's limited, and you get tired of it after a while when it's there. And then the other side of the coin is the distress. Where there's happiness, there's always distress. Or chit, that means full of knowledge. In this material world, there's so much ignorance. They're always trying to figure out answers to puzzles that keep arising in this material world. And no one has found the solution to living a happy, peaceful life forever, because it can't be found materially. So there's so much ignorance here. There's no knowledge that leads us to the ultimate fulfillment of our ultimate desires. So Sat means eternal. In this material world, everything is temporary. So for identifying materially, if we're just seeing on this material platform, we won't be able to go beyond the temporality, the ignorance, the the lack of real pleasure, which is unending and always increasing. So to be on that platform, that's why we're looking for those things. We want things to last forever. We want to be happy all the time. We want to be in full knowledge. Why do we want these things? Because that's who we are. That's who we are. We want to experience, we want to realize who we are. We want to realize the self, who we actually are. And in modern society, people are taught to look in the wrong place, the wrong direction. They think of success, they think of material success, etc. Think of happiness, they think of material happiness, etc. So, you know all these things. I have the sense that you know these things. And that's why you're here. So, this is why people like to meditate. They want to go beyond these things. See everything from a higher standpoint and uncover the nature of the soul, the nature of the self. And that's what transcendental meditation enables one to do. It brings out our spiritual consciousness, our natural consciousness. And so the mechanism we explained a little bit before, it's a question of linking our consciousness up with the supreme consciousness, and the via media, or the channel which is considered to be very easy to do that is through transcendental sound vibration, like vibrating these spiritual sounds. And as we were explaining before, there are different names of the Supreme, like Hare, for example. That's an address to the internal pleasure potency of God, or the loving potency of God, or the feminine aspect of God, Divine Mother. Krishna, Divine Father. And Krishna, specifically that word in Sanskrit, it means, it's a Sanskrit word that means the all-attractive one, the all-attractive supreme entity. So it's a recognition that of everything that's attractive in this world, that source is there, or that attractive quality is there unlimitedly in the source. So that's why it said all attractive. And then Rama is another name, describes the Supreme as the source of all pleasure. So by connecting our consciousness up with the Supreme Consciousness, by focusing through this transcendental sound vibration, one comes in contact with that unlimited source. And there's reciprocation there. Of course, the more open we are, the more open the heart is, the more we're focusing, the more we call out sincerely, the more that reciprocation can take place. And when it does, then one wants to just keep chanting, and chanting, and chanting. In Brazil last year, 2 years ago, we had a 48-hour kirtan. Ajamil and I were there. We didn't stay awake 48 hours chanting. But we were there a lot. And the kirtan went on for 48 hours. And it felt like 4 or 5 hours. It went so fast. The other night we chanted for an hour and a half. It felt like 10 minutes. And then last year we had a 72-hour kirtan in Brazil. They like to party in Brazil. This is we have a farm in between Rio and Sao Paulo. So thousands of people were there chanting. And then this year we'll have a 108-hour kirtan. It just keeps going and going and going. It's a remarkable experience once you get a little taste of that transcendence that's there in the sound vibration. And so this is why kirtan is so popular. It's a simple type of meditation. That's why we like to do it. There are other types of meditation where you sit silently, cross-legged, and they're effective. At the same time, it's not so easy, especially in a society where we're externally oriented. We're always wanting to connect our senses with something. It's very difficult. the way that system of meditation is described in the sacred text is silent meditation, you go to a secluded place, you live very, very austerely, and you sit quietly, hour after hour, and you meditate on God in the heart. It's very difficult to do that, especially in this society. It can be done by certain individuals. And all of us can sit for 15, 20 minutes, perhaps, and just be silent and not move. But for longer than that, and to have the mind focused, to blank the mind out, it's not an easy thing. But if the mind is utilized in this mantra meditation, the senses utilized, playing instruments, singing, dancing, clapping, whatever, then it's so much easier for the mind to become focused. And anybody can do it. You don't have to be a great yogi. You don't have to wear these robes. You can be an ordinary person. You don't have to be a monk. You don't have to have great material ability in one way or another. Just chant. In our chanting sessions, our kirtans, little kids are chanting, older people or elderly people are chanting. Everybody can do it. And when you do it together, it's an amazing experience. Because a group experience is always very, very powerful if everybody's focused in a particular way. And just like, because some of you were enthusiastic, that enthusiasm was a little bit contagious. And it's so much easier to get absorbed like that. Of course, everybody likes music. So if music is pleasant, that's another factor that enables us to become more easily absorbed. And then focus. It's a spiritual focus. It's a divine focus. And that makes it attractive as well. So all these qualities make this meditation a very attractive and simple way of transcendence. And we also have meditation beads. They're like a lot of spiritual paths. The Buddhists will have these, Muslims have meditation beads, Catholics. I'm sure so many of them. It's another way to focus on the mantra. Like we'll get up early in the morning, and sometimes during the day we'll chant also, or in the evening. Just quietly, softly, vibrating the mantra. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Ram, Hare Ram. It's a beautiful way to just go beyond a little bit, rise above a little bit what we might be getting entangled in so often during the day. So it's another form of meditation. Always vibrating the mantra, even softly. You can even vibrate it silently. You can go over it in your mind. It's a little harder to focus on. You find if you practice a little bit, do it just a little bit, you'll feel the difference. And that will just get you beyond. And when we rise above a little bit, all our mundane experiences, we can see them in a better perspective. So often we get agitated by situations we really don't need to be getting agitated. We start hankering after something, or the lust, the anger, the greed, all these emotions come up in the course of our day that distract us from our real spiritual goals in life. So if we don't want to become distracted, if we want to have as one of our primary goals in life to advance spiritually, to purify the consciousness, then when we see some of these qualities coming on, if we act according to these lower qualities, we'll want to do something about that. We'll want to be able to see things in a higher perspective. Like when you get angry and you say the wrong thing and you do the wrong thing, it doesn't feel very good at all. Usually when you're angry, you might even think you're right. One of the symptoms of anger is that you get a little bit, your intelligence gets distorted a little bit, you get a little bit diluted. And while you're angry, you think, yeah. But then afterwards you think, oh man, what did I do? What did I say? So it's nice to be able to control that before it happens. It's good to realize that you did the wrong thing. That's good. But how to prevent it from happening again? It requires a little bit of detachment from the situation, a little bit of understanding that this isn't the all in all in life. Why am I getting so hung up with these little things? Getting distracted from real important goals in life. So the meditation helps one already be on that higher platform so that one doesn't fall in to those activities that come about because our lower nature is stronger than our higher nature. Spiritual platform, you start saying the right things, doing the right things. Your goals start changing. They become more refined. And usually I consider it a little bit important to say, because some people have the conception that in order to practice spiritual life, we're saying that you need to be a monk or live in an ashram. That's not true at all. There are so many thousands and thousands of people that are doing just what we're doing, but they do it within the context of their family life or their employment, their school, so on. It's just a question of taking a little time out of the day to train oneself spiritually. Read some spiritual texts on a regular basis. And what does that do? That's also meditation. It's not the same type of meditation, but it is meditation. Meditation means to focus the consciousness on a spiritual object, ultimately on the source of everything. So if we're reading spiritual knowledge, that clears our intelligence, elevates our intelligence. The intelligence is like the goal setter. For example, if you're sick and you're not supposed to eat something, you have a cold, you're not supposed to eat ice cream. I like ice cream. And your friend's eating all this, your favorite type of ice cream with all the trimmings and everything, you're sitting there. And then you're thinking, well, I'm not that sick. I mean, I've had ice cream before when I was sick. It wasn't that bad. And all of a sudden, your senses are so strong, they overpower your mind. Your mind starts thinking like that, and your mind's so strong, it overpowers your intelligence. Like the senses, they're gross matter, right? The tongue, I love that. And then the mind starts meditating on it. The mind's more subtle. Yeah, I want that. Then the intelligence is more subtle than the mind. And so the intelligence says, yeah, you don't really have to worry about what you eat. Having a cold has nothing to do with that. So, on the other hand, if your intelligence is strong, then when your senses become agitated for something and your mind starts following suit, yeah, I want that. And intelligence says, wait a second, wait a second. You want to get well because you have many important things to do, etc., etc. So that's an example, a material example of the intelligence being strong, and also an example of what happens when it's weak. So spiritually speaking, if we can get our intelligence strong on that platform, the spiritual platform, then the decisions that we make in our lives will benefit us spiritually. If our intelligence is very weak spiritually, then we'll make decisions based on material sense gratification. Our lives will revolve around the material. It won't revolve around the spiritual. If our intelligence is strong spiritually, then we'll be able to make the right choices in terms of what we do, how we do it, where we go, where we don't go. So there'll be a proper balance between the material and the spiritual. So following a spiritual path, going in a spiritual direction, doesn't mean giving up one's material pursuits. It just means doing them in a way where you maintain your spiritual perspective. And so everything falls into place. There's a right balance between your material life, your material duties, and your spiritual life. And so that internal happiness will be there. And as a result, we won't fall prey or be distracted by all the agitations of this, all the allurements of this material world that just bring us down a path that isn't really good for us. So that's basically, that was the subject for today, right? Meditation? Okay, just want to be sure. So,
And reawakening of the inner self, which we did earlier.
okay, that's pretty good.
The ultimate expression of the self.
Yeah, yeah, that's good too, because it's as you can see, what we're talking about is not just it's not just like an intellectual. Yeah, some places I can't take it. I figured he'd be okay with you guys. This isn't just like an intellectual exercise that we're doing. This isn't like a class on meditation. It's more like a workshop, like a combination, because the experience speaks louder than anything I can intellectualize about. It's good to have both there. At the same time, that awakening is something that is not just something to talk about, it's something to experience. That's why this is called a science. It's a science. Because you have a theory, a hypothesis, that if you do this, et cetera, then that will happen, et cetera. And there's explanations about it. There's also the experiment. And there's the conclusion based on what we feel, what we can observe. So that reawakening can be something that's readily experienced. So, does anyone have any comments or questions, anything that you're thinking about, wondering about, that I might be able to, whether you want to bounce off? Yeah.
Well, you just, you were talking about intoxicants. Do you believe that certain intoxicants can like help you reach a state of to transcend?
Yeah, not temporarily.
Been there, done that. Yeah, I went through the whole thing in the 60s.
Oh.
And you might have read about it. Or you might have been there in your class. So you go up and you come down. I mean, I had a lot of so-called realizations. I mean, I was sure I was God for a while there. Then a half hour later, I was sure that I wasn't. It's temporary, and it's limited. Consciousness has a natural capacity to expand without anything, ingesting anything external. And actually, any yoga system, if one wants to follow it properly, one of the no's, the do nots, is to take intoxication, even caffeine, because that interferes with a subtle mechanism to become more and more enlightened. The consciousness has that ability, that mechanism. But the meditation has to be done in just the right way. It's a refined process. Even though what we were doing was realizing our gross senses, but so much of it has to do with the way one lives one's life when one is not doing the meditation as well. And the more one lives one's life in a way that is spiritually beneficial, when it comes time to do the meditation, you really experience the effect. And so when you take, because I was in a transitional period there from being on one end of the spectrum and going to this end of the spectrum, and I was seeing the difference practically in terms of my ability to focus and really concentrate for an extended period of time and live my life in a spiritually beneficial way. Big difference between when the effect of intoxication was there and when it wasn't. And in those days, We tried everything. I don't know if I should be talking about this. You know, hey, did you try banana peel, smoking banana peel yet? No, I haven't tried it. Yeah, it's great. You know, there was banana peel, and then there was something else, you know? It was always like something, like this frantic effort to get high, to alter your state of consciousness. But, you know, it would always wind up back down, and sometimes a lot lower. Or just like, I don't know if you still do it, taking amphetamines to study for finals. Do they still do it?
They're popular nowadays.
Huh?
Very
Yeah,
popular.
you know, you take amphetamines, and then, wow, this is great. Never liked geography, but this is like fantastic. And you're up all night, you know, it's great. You get, you know, whatever on your test, and then after that, it starts getting real difficult, really difficult. So you experience a certain level of increase in one way or another, but then after that, and what to speak of the physical effect as well. So that was my experience, and it's also explained like that. In any original text that you read about yoga or meditation, it's always advised to stay away. When you really get into it too, coffee, caffeine, cigarettes, anything that is a stimulant or an intoxication, then one naturally will want to give those things up so one can really be clear in one's consciousness to be able to focus. But it's not required. In other words, we don't say, see, anyone here who's taking any intoxication, doing this, that, you're not allowed to chant. You have to you can observe. It's not like that. Anybody can chant. That's the beauty of it.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare